This is coal. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared.
The Treasurer knows the rule on props.
By 1990, no Australian child will be living in poverty.
Well, may we say, God save the Queen, because nothing will save the Governor General.
Mate, because I want to do you slowly.
I want to do this slowly.
I believe we are in danger of being swamped by Asians.
But we will decide who comes to this country and the circumstances in which they come.
People are entitled to their sexual proclivities.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man. I will not.
The Australian public does not want to see this place descend into a political coliseum.
Just sit down, Buffett.
Welcome to The Take. Welcome to part 2 of the why Graham Platner is a terrible candidate and an example of how American leftists kind of leave all of their values behind when somebody is saying things they like or they're a fan of their show. This is all about Graham in this one, and this is part 2 of 3. There's one more video that's a little bit shorter. I apologise, having tech issues. It's driving me nuts, but I hope you enjoy it. Bye. And I remember because I was an early career teacher and we studied political theatre because it's one of my favourite styles of theatre. And in studying political theatre, guess what was a big political topic in 2003? The Iraq War, of course, and we talked about. I did this like parody play that I got my year 12s to perform, and it was like Little Sally Goes Around the World, and it's like a tour of all the worst, things happening to people, and it was really interesting. I remember including some testimony. That's right. I remember now. This is a long time ago. I'm an old lady. We got the testimony of the people who were being tortured, and that was when they had a policy of torturing. Dick Cheney just died. That's his fucking legacy. I can't believe those Democratic shills went to his fucking funeral. But they did also just go all in with Cheney in the last election. How'd that go for you, Dems? Good? Not good. Yeah, so look, the timeline does seem a little weird. So on the side here from Big Dumb Idiot, it says, okay, so he felt he was not pulling his weight, got out for college, got bored, went to re-enlist, got bored. Yeah, he does say many times that he went to war for adventure. He got bored. Does that sound familiar to anybody who's been up in arms about fucking Gila Klein, who I fucking hate? She's an evil demon, right? IDF raider of Ramallah. She said she got bored, and that's why she wanted to go out on one of the nights of raiding, right, into the illegally occupied city of Ramallah, and all the people who are sort of like, in the internet world are like, oh, that was a bad thing to do. She got bored. Well, fuck her. And they're all like, oh, well, Graham, no, don't. Graham Platner's fine. He got bored. Fuck, he got fucking bored. All right. Next one. This is, I think, from an article, but born and raised in Maine, Platner joined the Marines out of high school, mostly out of like a young man's sense of duty and also a bit of a call to adventure. Yeah, so fucking adventurous. He deployed to Iraq, serving for 4 years. Upon returning, he went to Washington, D.C. That's interesting. Did you meet in Washington, D.C.? Did you meet any interesting people being an ex-Marine? What'd you study? I wonder what he studied. I haven't heard what he studied. He was a bartender, so he had a job as well. But also, I mean, if he was a bartender, right, his mother owns a restaurant. Couldn't he work there? You know? Anyway, to attend George Washington University, but he had a lot of friends still deployed, and he felt he was not pulling his weight. So he re-enlisted in the army, deploying to Afghanistan in 2010 and 2011. What an interesting choice that was. Felt he wasn't pulling his weight. In what? For what? According to what? It's so bizarre. So, this is a post. You clearly don't and might have a slight learning disability from the sounds of it. Why don't you call him the arsler, Graham? He's fond of that word. He used that word even in 2021. Do you know what I was doing in 2021 when, if that word, because I would hear it occasionally because school students still say it. I told them, please don't say that word. It's offensive. Apparently Graham wasn't. 3/8 kilo made sergeant in Ford, spent my last year as a kilo MG section leader. Got out for college, got bored, and went to re-enlist. But when the Maradmin for sleeve tats came out in 2007 while we were on a ship, our brilliant S1, staffed by Marines of similar mental acuity as yourself, forgot to submit the page 11 photos for those of us getting grandfathered in. Could have fought for a waiver, but it pissed me off a bit. Oh, so, they were the arsler as well. They didn't give a shit about, went to the army office. They didn't give a shit about forearm sleeves and spent my army time in LRS and then group. Served with some excellent soldiers and units in the army and realized that there were pockets of the army that are hands down fantastic warfighters. My guess is you're a little slow and you weren't a very good Marine. So your new hobby is typing like a tween girl on the internet. I wish you luck in this new endeavor of yours. It is interesting that he used the word tween because I just don't think that there would be too many, just kind of like military dudes who would have that in their normal vernacular. Because I teach teenagers and, like I'm terminally online, that was something that I would use. So I just wonder what he was doing while he was not in the military. It just seems very interesting, especially if he was in some form of intelligence, because, that does lead to other jobs in intelligence. Just saying. Spent every waking moment of my teenage years trying to get the hell out. Joined the Marines, spent 15 years living all over the world and the country, and rarely came home. 2 years ago, I visited in the summer for the first time since 19. Now I own a home 200 yards away from the home I grew up in. Maine is the best place on earth. We're lucky we can call it home. So he spent like 20 years trying not to go to Maine, and now he's like, I love Maine, it's the best. Weird. And do you own a home, Graham? That's really imagine the privilege of being able to own a home, because that actually is not a privilege afforded to many people just like you, even army people, because a lot of people do get deployed and based in various other places. So yeah, it's all very interesting. Yeah, guy who was allegedly disillusioned by the military 7 years earlier responding to, "Ooh, thank you to your service with, it was my pleasure. I very much enjoyed soldering." And that's what we'll see later. This is something to do with serving. It was a time to go a while back. It was just a goddamn waste. What has to get sorted out over there isn't going to involve the United States. I did several rotations in Afghanistan between 2010 and 2018. It's utterly pointless. Yeah, again, I'm hearing that he's disillusioned, but not because of the people who are dying. USMC logic. Goes through re-enlistment package after 4 years and backs out the last minute before swearing in. 6 months later, denied re-entry due to tattoos previously documented on re-enlistment package. He really did want to be a Marine again, didn't he? I wonder why. Interesting. Keeps on talking about a sleeve tattoo as well. So the chest tattoo was fine? Okay. Same thing happened to me. Joined the army instead. Don't regret a thing. 2018. Seems like only having 2 tours in 8 years isn't enough, you know? To be fair, I enjoyed the hell out of fighting in Afghanistan. 2018. It's pretty, and the terrain is made for small unit maneuver warfare with its varied terrain and comparatively sparse low buildings. It's the fighting in the Iraqi cities that sucks. That was just a terrifying experience. For you, yeah, for real, like it must have been. Was it hard on you? Is it hard on you, Graham? Well, imagine what the Iraqis felt. Selfishness. This is making... I've read this before, but it's making me pissed off now. Lost a really good friend in Helmand, hit by a roadside IED riding a Mastiff. Where were you deployed? I was in Helmand Province 2, USMC. We would get hit with IEDs near Sangin a lot. Fuck Sangin. I'm sorry about your friend, man. It wears the fuck out of me seeing my buddies get blown up and not being able to do a damn thing. I thank God every day, though, that other than a few injuries, everything came back mostly in one piece. Did this thing come back mostly in peace? Because it seems like you are proud of being a veteran, proud of your service, but then you say, like everybody says, he has denounced his time in the service. He's changed. He deserves redemption. No, he doesn't. No, he fucking doesn't. I was Northeastern Army with 10 and 11. Lost lots of buddies from my time in the Corps. Did tours down in Helmand. It was a gun show down there. Also did Fallujah and Ramadi back in 05, 06 as a Marine. I always go to say Ramadi as Ramadi. He mentions that he was stationed in Ramadi and Fallujah more often than not. I have heard that from him many times. I think he is proud of that. I think that's him signaling to people who are not left wing, just your normies, right? He's doing all the other stuff to signal to the left. Oh, look at me, I'm a lefty. Medicare for all. Oligarchy, boo. Like he says all the right things. But then little things like that, I served in Fallujah and Ramadi. That's a little signal to his military buddies saying, I said, shh, I'm a tough guy. I really did it. I did the thing as a Marine. What do Marines do that is different from the infantry? I'll have to Google it later. Anyway, he says, thanks for your service. You're doing well since you got back. It was my pleasure, 2018. I very much enjoyed soldiering. I am. Went to college, but missed that kind of work. So I'm back in Afghanistan working for state. It's interesting that he said working for state because I would have thought that indicated working for the government, like he was still enlisted, but that he was working for Constellus, or as it was formerly known, Blackwater. So that's just my little. I'm sure he's not trying to be duplicitous in that sense of the word, but it's interesting that they would say I'm working for a state contractor, but like it's still an independent business. It's not like representing the state as such. So, yeah. All right. So this says, short answer is yes. Long answer is that the rebels were trying to, I have to kind of like guess what the context is, but we can guess from what he's talking about. Trust me. Long answer is that the rebels, we are trying to get arms into the hands of, so this is 2013, will hopefully kill these guys long before things calm down, long enough to start civilized things like prosecutions. Savages. Aren't they savages? Anyone who believes the US intelligence or military community doesn't have a hard on for killing these guys we've been fighting for the past 12 years is living in a dream world. Killing hardcore jihadists is the first thing on the list of daily goals for our intel or military people. And this hasn't been forgotten just because Assad is killing civilians. That's interesting. I don't know if it indicates that that's what his point of view is, because he's not saying, they're fucking crazy or whatever. The reason it's taken so long to arm and train rebel fighters is because our folks wanted to make damn sure they weren't the crazies, like the crazy jihadists. Woo! And the hope is if Assad falls, enough weapons will be in the hands of enough well-trained secular fighters to murder nut jobs like the ones in the videos. It's so interesting looking at this today, especially with who was in the White House on Veterans Day. But I'll keep reading and then we'll talk about Giuliani. I realize everyone seems to think the arming of the rebels is the repeat of a CIA's embrace of fundamentalist Muslim groups fighting the Russians in Afghanistan. But that is frankly a very outdated and naive outlook. Oh my God. Exactly what I bet. Oh my God. Okay, finish this one. To think we have forgotten the past 12 years and the brutality of our opponents, is laughable. Come on, Graham. So if the rebels win and the fanatics like the ones in the video survive the fighting after, yes, the US will support their prosecution. Hopefully they'll be killed with US supplied arms by a US trained secular rebel before that day comes. So does he believe in getting people, getting due process? Does he believe in that? Maybe not. But also, so Assad did fall, and who took over? Al-Qaeda. This man was in Al-Qaeda, who they funded, and now, he was a murderer. He cut people's heads off. And now he's been in the White House getting sprayed by perfume, by Trump's perfume. And Trump said, "How many wives do you have?" Because he doesn't know anything about anything. And yeah, so now we're, pally. Is that okay? I don't think, see, but Graham would probably not like that because, that's who he was fighting. And now he's in the White House. So he'd want to be, and Mohammed bin Salam, no, MBS, the guy who killed Jamal Khashoggi, also got a welcome. How are you? Welcome to the White House. We hate Muslims unless they're rich and can put money in our pocket. And then we love Muslims. Well, we don't even want to talk about religion, but just money talks. Nothing else matters to Trump. All right, next. So this is 2014. We are going to kill thousands. By the end of it, maybe millions. Our way of life is better, and if that is what it takes to prevail, let's get this show on the road. I don't disagree with your point. I just disagree with the fact you seem to think we shouldn't do it. That's your guy. Leftists and liberals and progressives, this is your guy. Haven't heard him denounce that. If I could have just stayed, so this is 2021, and he talks about, wanting to still be in the military, and the reason why he why he didn't stay in, because he wanted more money, but he didn't want to get off the guns. So let's hear it. If I could have just stayed in the gun section, but had the opportunity to still gain promotions, at least in the relation to pay, I would likely still be in the Corps. If my fellow machine gunners were NCOs or at least an equivalent pay grade that allowed men to spend significantly longer periods in roles we currently allot to the kids, I can imagine a unit that is far has far less stupidity and far more professionalism. But I cannot see a service that has been built on 50 years of up or out bureaucracy making this switch. So he really did want to stay in but he couldn't because, you know, you don't make enough money just being on the weapons, you know? God. All right, next one. Here is Graham with his shirt off. I don't know where he's serving here or what he's doing, but yeah, I can see that Totenkopf really out there. Doesn't seem to be very embarrassed by it. Good for him. Give me a break. I served 2 tours of Fallujah and Ramadi, wink wink, as a Marine infantryman, and very few of my buddies are having major problems, let alone murdering others. Is about like the effects of people going to war, and this is him downplaying PTSD, which is terrible. They were, however, several maladjusted guys who just used the experience to justify major problems. Well, that sounds like victim blaming. And who routinely tell stories about 80 plus kill counts, no matter how ludicrous that number is, to anyone who had served in the country, barring some, as in low, but extremely few snipers, many of whom are still on active duty and doing fine. PTSD is a real thing, but it's not nearly as prevalent as made out to be. And even then, it manifests itself in much less homicidal ways. Some guys really eat up hardcore killer junk, and it's the failure of NCOs to replace that with professionalism that leads to this shit. Oh, so he's saying, like, you know, if you have this like crew of people who maybe all they do is play COD or I remember seeing, you know, like Michael Moore's documentaries at the time, and there was a lot of like them playing like Killing in the Name of and Rage Against the Machine while they're, you know, killing in the name of, completely without irony. That being said, anytime some guy bangs on and on about all the people who he killed and how fucked up he is, and that's why he's on drugs, insert war sob story here. Are you fucking joking that you're gonna shit on somebody who's um become addicted to drugs because they don't like who they are because of the war? That's bullshit. Fuck this guy. Addiction's complicated. In recovery, doing well, but fuck that guy. You can bet he was a pretty subpar soldier or Marine and is somewhat full of shit. Sadly, some of those guys did indeed see some action, and so it's hard for anyone beside these guys who were there to call them out on it. Don't buy everything you read on the internets. That also indicates to me that he was terminally online. The internets, you know, like this, I'm only calling it out because this kind of like how I would talk from being, you know, online. All right. This is continuing on. Will the Americans push The Hague to prosecute rebels like these for war crimes? Seeing as the US does not acknowledge or adhere to International Criminal Court in The Hague, no. The US doesn't when it comes to its own people, but has a working relationship with the ICC. It handed over Bosco Ntaganda, an indicted war criminal in Congo, and the court after he surrendered himself at the US Embassy in Rwanda. If it wants to, there's no legal reason the US couldn't help prosecute war criminals. And in Iraq, though, they would be responsible for some of the war crimes as well. So it's like the fucking the ICC indicting Yahya Sinwar and Benjamin Netanyahu, you know, like. All right, according to international law, if the same rebel forms a new regime, then said regime is liable for war crimes that were committed. Okay. So this is the same one that I was talking about before, where this is Graham's answer. The crazies. Those crazy Arabs, right? Those crazy Muslims, those crazy jihadists. our way of life is just better, right? The response to Graham, like, saying all that shit about, like, we hope that, that we won't have to have these trials because, like, the people we train, they're going to kill them. It's not about killing radical Islamists, hardcore jihadists, like you're making it out to be. This conflict is far more geopolitical in nature. The US-backed Gulf Arab regimes and the Russian-backed Shiite axis, extending from Iran to Hezbollah, are currently fighting a proxy war. Can you point me to a reputable source which shows who the moderates are in the conflict? I highly doubt it. Those elements are few and marginal. The US intelligence community knows that any weapon it ships will likely end up in Salafi hands. The question is whether it is better to have those guys armed and fighting the Shiites with risks inherent in arming Salafi militants, or leave them unarmed to let Iran win. And this is 2013, and like, we're still dealing with some of this shit today because America has to meddle in every fucking thing in the entire world, especially if it looks like socialism might be taking hold anywhere. Because essentially they do the bidding of capitalists. And this is I keep calling him fucking Brian because that's the name of the majority report person who loves him. I don't believe in killing hardened jihadists is the strategic goal of funneling arms. More like a perk. Lol. It most certainly is a proxy war with Iran and Hezbollah. That's how New Zealanders pronounce Hezbollah. Hezbollah. Backed by the Russians, but that doesn't mean we're satisfied with arming Sunni extremists. If we were, we would have started handing out weapons a while ago. The point of my post was to question the generally held belief, alluded to in the OP's question, that the US will be happily supporting the same guys we've been fighting for the last 12 years. You seem to believe that, but I think it's misguided. Will some arms fall into extremist Sunni groups? Sure thing. But they won't be handed over purposefully. We're just going to have to disagree on the existence of secular fighters. I would argue they are a minority these days because of where the arms have been coming from so far, Sunni regimes. But in reading the article cited below by Qatar, it's clear plenty of Syrians are quite displeased with living under the crazies. That's a recruiting pool. They just need guns and training. From a real politic perspective, we then have a force that is fighting the Shiite bloc and who we can rely on the fight the Sunni extremists if that day comes. And the last person said, this was a good response. Have an upvote. Interesting. It seems like Graham really knew a lot about this war, the reasons why. For somebody who is disillusioned, like usually the story of somebody who is disillusioned and, becomes anti-war afterwards, again, Greg Stoker is the model of this. He deserted. He didn't serve 4 more terms in the army he said that he's disillusioned by. Yeah, it seems to me that you wouldn't be so knowledgeable about the background politics, If I think of someone else like just a general grunt who's like, oh, I hate this. I don't want to fight people. It's bad conditions. It's hot, etc., etc. And they know they're just killing civilians for some rich guy in America. That's a pretty easy message to get just from fighting every day. Graham knows exactly why. He knows the reasons. He knows the underlying point of why they were there, because it's a proxy war and so on and so forth. And he went back many times. It's just It's so unbelievable that he was disillusioned. Okay, so this is about a New York Times piece. I think it was a podcast. So this is 2018. Congresswoman confirms Eric Prince tied to assassination program ran out of Dick Cheney's office. Now, Eric Prince is this awful man who was the CEO of Blackwater, the business that one of the military contractors in Iraq who were responsible for massacres and just really shitty things happening. And at a certain point in Iraq, there came a time when having so many military contractors was not useful because they weren't as much money coming over, and they all amalgamated into Constellus. And that's what Graham said when he was on Breaking Points, given cover by Ryan Grimm and Crystal Ball. And he said, oh, yes, well, I didn't, because he said, like, a lot of people have said to you, Graham, that, how do you, somebody who's disillusioned, end up working for Blackwater? And he says, well, first of all, I didn't work for Blackwater. It's not, and even Ryan Grimm said, this little, like Blackwater spin-off. No, it was Blackwater. And and Graham said, well, what was Eric Prince's little fiefdom, like indicating that he didn't think Eric Prince was anything. And Eric Prince is fucking terrible, like, seriously. And so Graham wants to portray that he was anti Eric Prince, but here is him defending Eric Prince. So, not to disparage the source, but we really should wait for more sources to verify this claim. I really don't want this to be false. Somebody gave them a link, and P. Hustle, Graham Platner, says the New York piece says the company provided assistance in a logistical role, and it wasn't successful in killing or capturing any targets. She actually doesn't confirm what the headline says, but dances around it, calling him a key player in intelligence operation being run out of the BP's office. Platner was trying to say that, oh, they didn't do anything bad. Blackwater didn't do anything bad over there. They're just there for logistics. Why is my voice so hot? I don't know. That's not Graham Platner's voice. What are you doing, Minnie? Can you see the dogs fighting in the background? Yeah. Minnie's the funnest one to rile up. Like, I do this in the distance, and she's like, she gets real upset about it. Okay. Yeah. He said, oh, I suppose he would have been really impressed with, like, the Gaza Humanitarian Fund. They were just there, just giving out food. It's all just logistics. It's just logistics work. All right. Again, why did I go so high? Thanks. Shout out to Bad Empanada, like, all the time, because he is always on top of everything. The post that I did find on the Reddit on Big Dumb Buffoon's account does sort of downplay what is happening, but this one downplays it even more. So let's take a look. What is it like being a military contractor? I think they were in this dialogue, like, just talking about, the Blackwater hit squads or whatever. That's about as not true a statement as statements come. Being a contractor is generally boring as shit, even on cool sounding details in high threat areas. Did you get bored? The whole Blackwater hit squad narrative is complete bullshit, even though it's, like, been proven. And these leftists who cover it They covered the hit squads. And, like, there's evidence that Cheney, the VP at the time, was giving orders to do that. It's all security, totally reactive and offensive tactics are so rare that when they do happen, it turns into a Michael Bay movie. Looking at you, 13 hours. Oh, he's so funny and cute. Also, yeah, they probably would be pretty reactive because you're in someone else's country telling them how to live. Our way of life is better, he says. I don't know if that's come in the video yet, but that's what he said. And, especially as they're trying to do this beat up about Venezuela and saying, your people aren't happy. And you've got Brett Stevens at the fucking New York Times trying to, say that, oh, Maduro needs to go. We need, regime change. Who the fuck made you guys the captains of the world? No one. Fuck off. And honestly, that's what a lot of countries are saying now because America's not what it used to be. Even in the Wild West days of B-dubs in Baghdad, nobody was acting as hitmen. I mean, except all of you who killed people there. The big events were almost entirely massive fuck-ups from ill-prepared and untrained amateurs like Nisour Square. Closest you could ever get was Blackwater Air in Baghdad in the early years, and they weren't operating as some super secret assault force. They were just totally unsupervised and acting far outside their mandate. Christ, even the OGA contracts are defensive security. I love comparing defensive and offensive. Like, defensive just makes it seem like, oh, it's just a little thing. It's just, just defensive. It's not offense. We're not going out there killing people willy-nilly. We're defending ourselves from insurgents, from people who are being occupied and treated like dirt. You just have to see how some of the leftists are passing around racist memes because all of the exposed accounts who are pro-MAGA, like MAGA heads, have been shown that, I mean, they knew it was bot farms, but the bot farms could tell you where they are. And so some leftist fucking progressives are passing around racist memes. Gross. But this is what they do. The only people who keep this whole secret fighter idiocy going are ignorant civilians and insecure former infantrymen who want everyone to think they're ninjas. It's stupid. And I say this as a guy who did the security contractor thing for a bit. How long, Graham? That'd be interesting to know. But I love that you're doing PR out here in the world on the internet, not being paid by them. That's pretty loyal. Good job. Good job. Just, it's really starting to piss me off now that people are sticking up for him. Back to our regular timeline. So he is trying to say, like, well, they did provide a logistical role, and it wasn't even successful in killing or capturing any targets. So no harm, no foul. Okay. This is another thing that I found on Big Dumb Buffoon's account. Average Democrat Party progressive candidate. We need a more inclusive, equal, and just society. Graham Platner, for some reason. I can explain everything. The tattoos, the Reddit posts, the service of the army. Those were the Reddit posts that Big Dumb Buffoon as I said, he also had Reddit posts, and people have reported that he had said that sometimes he'd victim blamed people, women who were sexually assaulted. He called people the arsler. He said black people don't tip. Yeah, so there's a whole lot of that sort of thing going on. And, you know, to the people saying, well, didn't you shit post and, you know, post some stuff that you thought one way and then later you thought it? I'm like, yeah, maybe, but that's more like I used to adore Quentin Tarantino. Like his movies just were my favorite. I love Inglourious Bastards. I love fucking Django Unchained, Hateful Eight. Fucking loved him. And then I found out he was a Zionist, so now I don't watch him anymore. So my online like record of being like, I love Tarantino, he's the best, he's the greatest who ever lived. Yeah, I'm going to change my mind on that. But you know what? That's not really that controversial. That's not like it's a little bit cringy, like that I was such a stereotype. But I'm not going to, if somebody sent that to my employer, they wouldn't say, oh, she needs to go. Like people aren't going to be demanding I get fired for liking a Tarantino film. Unlike if I had, if I was had a Nazi tattoo, right? As a teacher, yeah, I might get fucking fired for that, right? So it's not exactly the same thing. It's not something done in youth that's like, oh, once we know better, we do better. I think that applies in this situation. But he keeps saying, you know, like, I am a good stand-up guy. Well, and I didn't work for Blackwater, and I don't think, like, Blackwater's bad, da-da-da-da. Didn't you work for Blackwater? Because in this picture, on your fridge, somebody with a very keen eye, well done you, has noticed something. And what is it? It's got a Blackwater sticker. It fucking is too, right? Okay, so we're going to come back to who's in this photo, but there you go, Blackwater sticker. And just in case people want to say, oh, it could be anything. This is the 2007-2009 Blackwater Worldwide logo. Really interesting that he would have like the vintage logo. Does that mean he was acquainted with Blackwater before this time? Because I think it does. And I think that, you know, like even the majority report said, well, isn't this something that lots of people do because they don't have any skills once they come out of the military? Which is an outrageous statement. Like, I'm sorry, what? You served in, even if you're just an infantryman, you got no job skills? If you can't think of job skills that you have learned by being in the military, then maybe you're a fucking idiot. Because there's plenty of things you could do other than join Blackwater. All right? But I am going to guess that Blackwater also, right, recruited people while they were still serving. And, you know, what do you do when you get a recruitment pack? You might get a sticker. Yeah, little fridge magnet. It could be a fridge magnet because that's pretty popular in Australia. I don't know if you do that in America, like lots of magnets for the refrigerator. That is a common thing in Australia. Now, does that mean he was in Blackwater? I don't know, but it does seem to really indicate that he was acquainted with Blackwater. Doesn't matter what it was called. And, same with Constellus. Even if Graham couldn't spell it on his, in the open secrets point thing that we looked at. Now, in this photo, let's take a look. So in this photo, I don't know who the fellow on the left is in that terrible shirt, but on the right, Graham Platner, he's an easy one. And then in the middle, we've got a guy. This is Graham's stepbrother because his mother's remarried, right? I think she got remarried because I think there was a picture of the wedding at a restaurant. Anyway, so this is Seth Frantzman, his stepbrother. So it's nice that he's real chatty, having a pal around with his stepbro, right? Well, so here he is, Seth Frantzman, and here he is going fishing with Graham on September the 1st, 2024. Oh, is this the stepbrother? Seth J. Frantzman. And what is this book that he wrote? Imagine, there's a book. Drone Wars, Pioneers, Killing Machines, Artificial Intelligence, and the Battle for the Future. Sounds interesting. Who's he doing? He's doing a bit of a conversation for APAC. He's speaking at APAC about drones, which has been the primary fighting machine of the genocide of Gaza and Palestine. That's Graham's stepbrother. So he's related to and gets along with. It's okay. Like, we know some families have people that have weird, beliefs and whatever. And a lot of people have MAGA relatives in America. I get it. We're running as a progressive Democrat. Seems a little bit sus that your brother not only wrote a book about drones and drone warfare, but also has been to Israel. And here he is on December 30th, 2023, right? And they call him Shrek. In Jabalia in Gaza with the IDF last week. So he's been embedded with the IDF. I wonder where he got all that information to write his book about the drone wars. We spent an afternoon with the IDF's new multi-dimensional ghost unit, which uses new tech and combines it with coordination with the Air Force and other units. To massacre civilians in Gaza, to massacre women, children, to massacre non-combatants. I did a video about a month, maybe 2 months ago now, about a doctor who delivered a baby and the mother didn't have a head. And that was because of Israel bombing them. It is disgusting to be this happy to be in Gaza. And he's got a press badge on. He's got a press shirt on. Interesting. Yeah, so that's his brother. Maybe saying that it's a genocide and it needs to stop. But he has some deep ties with Zionists. These ones. His stepbrother. And his stepbrother is in with a whole bunch of other people who are Zionists and has been embedded with the IDF and talks about drone wars. So do you think that Graham Platner is going to have policies that are influenced by this man. Remember how he said he wanted to make wars more, less pointless and more efficient? Do you think that possibly means using drones, more drones? Less men could do, hey. Anyway. The last Reddit post that I'd like to look at is from 2010. And even though it is that old, 2010 is not that fucking long ago. I'm sorry. It may seem like long ago, and the people who are making excuses for him may think, it's been so, he's changed his mind now. He's not like that anymore. Most things I believed in 2010, still believe, I'm okay with them, and like they weren't fucking bigoted. They weren't, I think that I have become less, more and more radical as I've gotten older. So I was probably still thinking that the lake could save us and whatever, but not anymore. All right, let's read this. So the question was, which wars would you fought in if you could have? Graham says the Indian Wars, the Philippines. Oh, sorry. The Indian Wars wasn't a war. It was a genocide, motherfucker. Yes, there were Indian tribes that tried to stand up for and defend themselves, but they were genocided. It wasn't a war. The Philippines, Haiti, Nicaragua in the 1920s, all imperial wars and colonial wars. Vietnam, Nicaragua, and El Salvador again in the 80s, again, imperialist wars and CIA regime change wars. As for would have, I did for Iraq and would love to get in the gun. Small wars are pretty enjoyable. It's the big ones with days of artillery fire and inhumane brutality that take the fun out of fighting. Did that take the fun out of fighting for you, Graham? Imagine how unfun it would be for the people getting fucking killed. Oh my God. But small wars, and Iraq and Afghanistan are indeed small wars, provide the rush of small combat actions along with the intellectual challenge of building personal relationships and infrastructure within the local community. Small wars are thinking wars, which I much prefer over the bloody slugfest of great power conventional warfare. Oh, and the revolution, because I'm American. God fucking damn it. As I've said, I've read these a few times now, and it's just beyond me how people are defending him. All right, so this is Graham's platform, all right? This is what he has on his website, and people keep on pointing to it and saying, oh, look, he's going to do so much fucking Medicare for all. It's not happening. America has entered a new gilded age, and this is all if he has watched Majority Report, Kyle Kalinske, Breaking Points, Ryan Graham, any of those people, this is exactly what they have been saying. This first paragraph is Kyle Kalinske all over. We have a government of, by, and for billionaires, a direct consequence of disastrous court decisions capped by Citizens United that have allowed billionaires to buy elections. As a result, they have built a billionaire economy, one that creates growth for a tiny privileged few, for a handful of billionaires and multinational corporations, and inflation, stagnation, and decline for the rest of us. In 1990, there were 66 billionaires in America. Today, there are over 900. When you look around, do you see a community that is over 10 times wealthier than in 1990? And so while my platform spans many issues, I will view most of my job as a US Senator as to do two things. One, to ban billionaires buying elections. Two, to dismantle the billionaire economy in favor of an economy that works for the American worker, the small business, and for the vast majority of Americans. I will be a senator for all those who can't buy senators. Yeah, if you are that, like if you can't be bought, then why are you major people putting money into your pocket? Why can you afford $15,000 on signing an NDA? And I think that that's still just too vague. So this is basically the rest of his thing. See, ban billionaires buying elections. How? Rebuild our failing healthcare system, support small business, break up monopolies, stop the mass deportation machine, pass real immigration reform. It doesn't say to defund ICE or disband it. Defend our air, water and land and our climate, decisive action for housing crisis, defend Medicare and Medicaid, protect Social Security before it goes bankrupt, and billionaire tax dodging, uphold tribal sovereignty and self-determination, strengthen our working waterfront, support unions and bring good union jobs to Maine, defend and support public schools, keep government out of our private lives, and defend the right to choose. Protect Maine's economy, raise the federal minimum wage, equality for all. The war in Gaza, war. Do you mean genocide? End the failed war on drugs, take on waste and corruption at the Pentagon, rebuild America's shipbuilding. Now, that one is an interesting one because that one is about China and not having China build the boats. No more pointless wars. That's important, pointless. Address the child care crisis, support Americans with disabilities, pay servicemen a fair wage, no more servicemen on food stamps, defend the VA and support our veterans, defend the post office and establish postal banking, pass term limits and hold politicians to their term limit pledges. Yeah, so when I was talking about who's donating to Graham, President and CEO of Sephora Americas, donated to Platner before the campaign was announced. And he's donated to charities in Maine, and he and his wife, Victoria Rygowitz, own a house in Sorrento, Maine. Why would the people, like, that sounds like big dollars from the fucking Sephora people. And why would they be donating before they even know that you're in the race? And, like there's all the other thing that was new on Big Dumb Buffoons. X was buying up all the domains well before, everything was announced. It does seem like he was recruited. His platforms. So remember how he said he wanted to fight in the Indian Wars? So he wants to uphold tribal sovereignty and self-determination. The Wabanaki of Maine are entitled to true sovereignty and self-determination. Too often, the state and federal governments have run roughshod over tribal sovereignty. As the campaign progresses, I look forward to developing a detailed platform on tribal issues in collaboration with the Wabanaki, who have been poorly represented in Washington for far too long. Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to have a chat with somebody who said they wanted to fight in the Indian Wars. Oh, so you wanted to kill all of my ancestors. Great. No more pointless wars. I will never, ever, pinky promise, totally swear. Why never, ever? Just say, I will never vote to send Americans into a pointless war. Everything we went through in Iraq can be laid at the feet of those in Washington like Senator Collins, who knew better but voted yes on a disastrous, deadly war. Yeah. Who lost the most out of that one, Graham? Pay servicemen a fair wage, no more servicemen on food stamps. Men and women in our armed forces often make far less than they would as a civilian. We have people serving in our armed forces, people who may one day be asked to make this ultimate sacrifice, making poverty wages. If we are serious about addressing the recruitment crisis, we will take some money out of these ungodly contractor and bureaucrat salaries and pay the rank and file for a fair wage. Ungodly, that's an interesting choice of word, ungodly. Also, I'm a bit confused because some of the people who who have gone into to fiercely defend Graham Platner have actually said that he went into the armed forces and Blackwater because he was desperate for money. He had to. He was forced to. He had no other choice. Won't somebody please think of Graham, who had no other choice but to go back to Western Asia and the Middle East to kill brown people so that he could scrape together a meal. If that's the case, then what? He's saying that they have poverty wages, so he didn't? Like, did he get a lot of money for going or not? Because he seems to say that he didn't, but you guys are saying that he did. So I'm just a little bit confused here. And is there a recruitment crisis? Would there be a recruitment crisis if you didn't have American bases in so many places around the world? What about that? You just, you know, actually just cared about America, not going into any country and saying, oh, we don't really like your leader. You're going to have to change it right now. This is a coup. Surprise! It's a coup. And yeah, you better just well, why? Just because we said. So yeah, it's interesting that he's talking about this rather than scaling down the military, because it doesn't matter what happens with elections, right? But if there is a Republican who has been in power and then the Democrat comes along to rescue everybody, they don't usually change what the Republicans did. They usually keep it going because they are the same party, right? They just pretend to be enemies. And everybody's buying it at the moment, I tell you. Not everybody. I think now more than ever, we are seeing people wake up from the Democratic Party's complete just lack of fight because it's so obvious at the moment. Yeah, I am confused about people who say that they go into the army not to be poor. All right, defend the VA and support our vets. Susan Collins stood shoulder to shoulder with Elon Musk while he slashed the Department of Veteran Affairs. Those cuts aren't numbers on a spreadsheet, they're attacks on veterans who rely on the VA for their health, their care, and their dignity. I served for 10 years overseas. I know what sacrifice looks like. And I also know this country is failing far too many of its veterans. I will never turn my back on the men and women who served. If you put on the uniform, then this country owes you a lifetime of respect and support. This means real job training, real career opportunities, and real pathways to stability when you come home. Oh, but what about therapy? Because you were saying in one of your posts, like, some people are just putting on their PTSD. How can we call ourselves the greatest nation on the earth when tens of thousands of veterans are sleeping on the streets tonight? That's not just wrong. That's a national disgrace. In the Senate, I will fight to ensure all of our veterans have a roof over their head when they come home. That's a noble goal, I think, to look after the people who did go in there. But some people join the military and they are privileged and they don't need all that. So it would be nice just to have basic structures in place for everybody. Like, it's shitty to be poor, and you should be trying to make sure everybody gets by. Taking on waste and corruption at the Pentagon and rebuild American shipping. Massive, what, again, you do not have to repeat things like that. It is dumb. Massive waste in procurement, a revolving door between Pentagon and massive defense contractors. Widespread consolidation encouraged by deliberate government policy to the point where competition has virtually disappeared in many vital areas. This is the legacy of several decades of disastrous mismanagement and profiteering at the highest level of the American military. We need to take the funds currently paying for mansions in Virginia and Maryland for defense contractors and reinvest them into closing the massive shipbuilding gap. I've seen under the hood. I know exactly how much money is wasted and where. Send me to Washington and I'll work tirelessly to rebuild the American military. That, again, does not seem like a negative about the military. Rebuilding it doesn't mean making it smaller, right? And that turn of phrase, I will work tirelessly to rebuild the American military. Just like Joe Biden and Kamala, AOC, we're all saying we are working tirelessly for a ceasefire. It's very on the nose.